He came without warning, killed without reason, and vanished without a trace. The man who turned the city of angels into a city of fear, and make the summer of Los Angeles wide awake. But who was the Night Stalker?
What kind of person would I describe myself to be? I don't know. Just an ordinary person.
Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, a leap year baby, in El Paso, Texas. He was the youngest of 5 children in a struggling household. His parents, Mercedes and Julianne, had immigrated from Mexico seeking a better life. His father, Julian Ramirez, a former police officer, worked long hours as a railway laborer, a man hardened by exhaustion and frustration. He was described as a volatile man prone to violent outburst. Ramirez was raised Catholic, but his home life was far from stable. By age 10, he had begun using marijuana and alcohol. Psychiatrists later described Ramirez as a made psychopath, not one born evil, but shaped by circumstance. Before the age of 6, Richard suffered several severe head injuries. Doctors believe these injuries may have affected the part of his brain that controls emotion and impulse, leading to aggression, erratic behavior, and what experts call temporal lobe epilepsy. At age 12, Ramirez came under the influence of his older cousin, Miguel "Mike" Valles, a Vietnam War veteran who boasted of war crimes and shared gruesome photographs and stories. This exposure, combined with his substance abuse and dysfunctional home life, created a fertile ground for something far more sinister to take root.
The cousin kept multiple mementos of his time in Vietnam, and he pulled out this box and showed all of these photographs of the women he was raping or the heads he was cutting off. It was a fascination. It wasn't recoiling in horror. It was like, wow, look what you've done.
But Miguel's influence went far beyond words. When Richard was 15, he witnessed something that would forever harden his heart. During a violent argument, Miguel took the life of his own partner and shot her in the head in front of Ramirez. For most people, this would be a moment of trauma. For Richard, it was a moment of awakening, a shocking display of finality that he claimed later fascinated him rather than terrified him.
He watched this cousin shoot his wife. It stuck with him, not in the sense of it was a bad thing, not in the sense that how could you do something so horrendous? I mean, oh my God, being sick to your stomach. He was fascinated.
After the tragedy involving his cousin, Ramirez began living with his sister Ruth and her husband Roberto. Roberto had his own disturbing habits, spying on women at night. He brought Richard along, feeding his growing obsession with voyeurism and the sense of power that came from invading others' privacy. When Miguel was released from a psychiatric hospital, he sometimes joined them, forming a trio bonded by darkness and deviance. By his late teens, Ramirez was addicted to LSD and cocaine. He spent nights lurking in motels and back alleys, studying how to break into homes. He was fascinated by Satanism, believing the devil's power could shield him from capture.
Developing, a lot of them got in trouble and went the wrong way. We did have some kids that killed their parents and things like that.
Ramirez's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He reportedly camped out in cemeteries to escape his father's anger, and even his father allegedly tied him to a crucifix in a cemetery overnight as punishment.
A serial killer comes about by circumstances and like a recipe: poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, contribute to a person to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
In 1982, at age 22, Ramirez moved to California and began supporting a growing cocaine addiction by committing thefts and burglaries in San Francisco and Los Angeles. In 1984, Los Angeles would meet the face of evil.
The horror began in June 1984. Los Angeles was under siege. Death waited in the dark at the hands of a man they called the Night Stalker.
The first known victim was Jenny Vinco, a 79-year-old woman found murdered in her apartment. Her throat was slashed, and the scene bore a mark, a pentagram drawn on the wall. Detectives didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning of a bloody reign of terror that would last over a year. Between 1984 and 1985, Southern California became a hunting ground. The media dubbed him the Night Stalker. He'd break into homes in the middle of the night, armed with knives, hammers, and guns. He didn't care who his victims were, old, young, men, women, even children. He attacked, killed, and stole. But he also left something else, symbols of Satan, pentagrams drawn on walls, and sometimes on his victims' bodies.
We're told to keep your windows locked. If you have a dog, put your dog out. It was a very, very anxious time here in San Francisco.
After his first known murder in 1984, Ramirez disappeared into the shadows. Police had no face, no name, just fear spreading like wildfire. Then, in March 1985, he returned. On the night of March 17th, 22-year-old Maria Hernandez was pulling into her garage when a man stepped out of the darkness and aimed a gun. She survived by pure instinct, raising her hands in time for the bullet to deflect. But inside the house, her roommate Dale Okazaki wasn't as lucky. An hour later, another woman, Tsai Lian Yu, was killed while driving her car. In one night, Ramirez had struck twice, and Los Angeles knew the nightmare had returned.
At first, Los Angeles police thought that the murder of a young woman last March was an isolated act of violence, but since then they've come to believe it was connected to a wide-ranging series of assaults by a killer who's become known as the Night Stalker, a killer who apparently struck again during the weekend.
10 days later, he broke into the home of Vincent and Maxine Zazzara. Vincent was killed instantly, but Maxine's death shocked investigators. The violence was personal. It was rage. Detectives realized they were dealing with someone who didn't kill for money or passion, but for power. From that night forward, he no longer hid. He began invading homes almost weekly, leaving chaos behind. As the months went on, Richard Ramirez turned California into a hunting ground. He moved from city to city, breaking into homes at random, striking without warning, and disappearing before dawn. There was no pattern, no motive anyone could understand. His victims came from every background, young or old, rich or poor, proving that no one was truly safe. The media named him the Night Stalker, and the name alone was enough to spread panic across Los Angeles. Families began sleeping with the lights on. Gun stores ran out of ammunition, and neighborhoods formed patrols just to survive the night. Ramirez thrived on the fear he created. It wasn't just about killing, it was about control. He wanted to be the darkness everyone feared. But what he didn't know was that his time in the shadows was running out. On May 14, 1985, Ramirez returned to Monterey Park. Inside the home of Bill and Lillian Dewey, he shot 66-year-old Bill in the face, beat him unconscious, and then assaulted Lillian. Bill managed to call the police, but later died from his injuries. Lillian survived, scarred for life. Just 2 weeks later, he broke into the home of 83-year-old Mabel "Mee" Bell and her 81-year-old sister, Florence Lang. He beat them with a hammer, shocked them with an electrical cord, and drew satanic pentagrams on their bodies and walls using lipstick. Lang barely survived. Bell did not. The media was beginning to whisper about a monster stalking Los Angeles nights.
Do I associate sex with violence? Break. Shit, man, this is a hard question. I don't know. I can't answer that, Mikhail.
The violence escalated again on June 27th, when the body of 32-year-old Patty Higgins was discovered in her bathroom, throat slashed. She lived alone and had no neighbors to hear her screams.
As far as Satan is concerned, I believe in a malevolent being. His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
By now, Los Angeles was gripped in panic. Police departments from multiple cities were working together, trying to catch a man who killed without motive or pattern. But Ramirez didn't stop. On July 7th, he murdered Joyce Nelson, a 61-year-old grandmother, beating her to death in her own living room. His Avia sneaker print was left imprinted on her face, a grim calling card. That same night, he broke into the Covenant home in Sun Valley. He killed the husband instantly, raped and beat the wife, and assaulted their 8-year-old son, forcing her to reveal valuables. Before leaving, he demanded she swear to Satan again. Miraculously, both survived.
When you start throwing the odds of more than one person wearing that particular model and size of shoe, it becomes, it narrows it down quite a bit that not more than one person is committing the crimes. When you have physical descriptions coupled with physical shoe prints, you've got, that's a neon sign saying, "Come get me." That's one man.
2 more Avia prints were found at the Sun Valley crime scene. At this point, police released a composite drawing of the suspect.
Killer who attacks randomly is described as white, 25 to 30 years old, with a predominant feature of badly stained teeth. So 5,000 flyers have been distributed to Los Angeles dentists asking for help with identification.
But on August 29, 1985, that ghost got a name and a face. One quiet summer night, a 13-year-old boy would unknowingly take the first step toward unmasking that ghost. It was August 24, 1985, in the small, peaceful suburb of Mission Viejo. James Romero III had just come home from a family vacation. As he unpacked his car, he noticed something strange. A man lurking in the shadows, watching him. The man's clothes were dark, his hair long and greasy, his eyes restless. He backed away slowly when James looked at him. Something didn't feel right. James went inside, told his parents, and the family immediately called police. But before they did, James wrote down something that would change everything. The brand, color, and the license plate number of the suspicious car parked nearby. That single act, a teenage boy's quick thinking, would help end one of America's most terrifying crime sprees. Days later, police quickly located the vehicle, a 1976 orange Toyota station wagon, in a parking lot in downtown Los Angeles. The Orange County Crime Lab processed the car and hit the jackpot the police had been waiting for months: a fingerprint. For the detectives who had spent months chasing a faceless killer, this was the breakthrough they had been praying for. Within hours, a mugshot was pulled from police archives, and for the first time, the city saw the face of the man who had turned their nights into nightmares. The next morning, August 31st, 1985, Ramirez boarded a bus in East Los Angeles, trying to escape the city. He didn't know that his own face was plastered across every newspaper and television screen. He walked into a liquor store in downtown Los Angeles and saw his face on the front page of the newspaper. Ramirez panicked and ran. Neighbors recognized and chased him. They shouted, "El Matador! The killer!" Hearing the commotion, neighbors came outside and surrounded Ramirez. A few blocks away, he tried to carjack Angelina de la Torre. He screamed at her in Spanish to give him the keys. Her husband, Manuel de la Torre, ran out of Ho's house and hit Ramirez in the head with a metal pole. After months of horror, the Night Stalker was finally in handcuffs. Fear loses its power the moment you face it. And in 1985, Los Angeles finally did. Jury selection began July 22, 1988. The Richard Ramirez trial became one of the most sensational courtroom dramas in U.S. history. He arrived in court flashing a pentagram on his palm, shouting, "Hail Satan!" to the press. The public watched in disbelief. This wasn't just a killer. This was a man who worshipped fear itself.
Big deal. That's always went with the territory. I'll see you in Disneyland.
In Los Angeles today, the man police call the Night Stalker was formally charged with one of the 16 murders authorities claim he has committed. 25-year-old Richard Ramirez is innocent until proven guilty by the state, but he could face the death penalty if he is convicted for last May's murder of a man in Monterey Park. Ramirez also has been charged with 7 lesser crimes ranging from sexual assault to burglary.
On September 20th, 1989, Richard Ramirez was convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. On November 7th, he was sentenced to death.
The final sentencing hearing for Richard Ramirez is now finally over, and as you said, the judge said he could find no mitigating circumstances. In other words, he could find no reason to not accept the jury's recommendation. That is, guilty on all counts and the death penalty in the gas chamber at San Quentin on all counts.
Even behind bars, Ramirez became a dark celebrity. He received letters from admirers, and in 1996 he even married one, Doreen Leoy, a freelance magazine writer who had sent him nearly 75 letters. Evil, it seemed, still fascinated people.
Yes. Who needs glasses here? I can't help the way the world looks at him. They don't know him the way I do.
But in 2009, after DNA tied Ramirez to the murder of a 9-year-old girl, May Lewing, which occurred in 1984 in San Francisco, Doreen Leoy left him. For over 2 decades, Ramirez lived inside San Quentin prison, unrepentant, unfeeling, and proud of his infamy. He was never executed. On June 7, 2013, he died of B-cell lymphoma at age 53, after nearly 24 years on death row.
Condemned murderer Richard Ramirez has died. Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, put fear and terror into California residents in the 1980s. He died of liver failure while he was on death row.
Richard Ramirez wasn't born a monster. He was made into one, shaped by violence, addiction, and darkness. But his story reminds us of something even more haunting, that evil doesn't hide under beds or in dark alleys. Sometimes it walks among us, smiling, unnoticed, until it decides to strike, lurking around as one of the countless News.